Hey, welcome back. Today we are doing a new part of the series. No, a new series called, I haven't decided yet. It's either going to be called Revisiting or Second Look. I think we'll go with Second Look. So the Microtech Anax, it's basically spent most of its time since I got it sitting in a box. It's a beautiful box, by the way. This is the standard one. They've come out with some interesting variants lately. I don't have any need or reason to go get those variants. I'm not like collecting Anaxes or Microtechs personally, but it is a really cool knife, and it does make me want to take a look at it again. So as a reminder, this is a full integral. That's what makes it really cool, more than pretty much anything else about it, I'd say. I think the other thing, actually, the full integral is really cool, and then the blade is really cool. It's pretty unusual in that it's a fuller, and it's a good one. It's kind of sharp, I've noticed, as I've tinkered with it more over time. The knife is pretty drop shut, as you just saw there. A little bit of a failed deployment there. I'm gonna very lightly, no. I was trying to see if the detent was light there, or if that was just me. It was probably just me. Lock up here is super good. Totally drop shut. You can't get it out with the thumb. It's not super consistent for me personally. In fact, I find if I use my fingernail, I can do it a little better. You can see I'm starting to take out a lot of skin and fingernail there to try and do that. You have to be really careful. It's not a super wide handle. It's actually quite narrow in the hand, I've noticed. And half that handle is lock bar, so that all kind of plays into that deployment. Now the other deployment method for this one, and I'm not good at it because it's a really long, heavy blade, and this is very sharp up here, is using it as a front flipper. See if I can even get it. There we go. 1 for 5. So it can be front flipped, which is cool. I don't think I was able to front flip it the first time I opened it when I was first getting used to it. Clearly I haven't improved much. But overall, it is a pretty cool knife. I'd say it reminds me, if I had to characterize this knife, it's a little bit of a concept knife, kind of like a concept car. Like, it's not like you look at it and you go, oh yeah, that's the future of knives. You're like, oh, that's the future of knives. Like, this is 2 steps ahead. This is definitely not what you expect of a knife right now. This is maybe what they will be more like at some point in time. Super centered, and love looking at the centering there because you see the integral frame. You know, it's one piece of titanium. It's just very neat. Trying to see why I keep failing the deployment there. I think it's just generally loading it up poorly, because it's generally fairly good. You know, I may just need to grab it higher up here. There we go. I think I was actually grabbing it right here. That's why I was failing it. So or further back or whatever, like back here. So I think if I really grab it high up, then I end up higher in the fuller as opposed to here. I end up more like here, and you get a little more momentum, a little more leverage, less leverage technically, more momentum, because you're pushing the blade faster for the distance that your finger is traveling. For those of you who are physics majors out there, you'll appreciate that. Pocket clip, same thing as when I first saw it. Not a big fan of this. This is cool looking, but not terribly functional, not great going over the pocket. I haven't carried this thing yet. I thought about carrying it for a video review, but it's just not there for me, frankly. It's not the knife that I want to carry. Could be a cool conversation starter, but I don't know. I'm just not ready to put down the ones that I have in order to carry this one for some reason. So overall, really cool knife. Like, I don't think I have changed my perspective on that. I think I've changed my perspective on where it fits into my collection. By the way, serial number 771, 9 of 2022 is when it was made. And then I think I've probably changed my appreciation a little bit for the action. Like, I think it's really nice drop shutty action. Again, I failed the deployment there by having my hand in the wrong place. And I remember not being quite sure, but learning later that that is just how the carbon fiber looks on these. It's just the style that they went for or whatever. So that was something I was looking at and trying to understand when I was doing the first review. Yeah, interesting one. I think for the right person, it's a really cool knife. I just don't know if I'm the right person for it, frankly. Nice little choke up point on the finger choil if you want to get up higher on it and stuff. It's small, but it's usable. It's really good balance. Noticed that the first time. Still feel that way about it. Well balanced knife. It's a big knife. What's the length on this thing? Over 8.5 inches. It's like 8.65 inches. A lot of cutting edge. I really like the blade shape in general. You know, for what it cost, which is I think $450 for this variant, there's some more expensive ones that are in the 500s, maybe even the low 600s. I think this is a really nice knife versus what's out there. Like, certainly you're not getting American made, you're getting an American brand that, you know, worked with Reich to produce this very high quality knife. That would probably cost, you know, $1,000 plus if it was made in the US. Size-wise and stuff though, you know, right in there with some of the coolest big knives out there. Just a different set of proportions in terms of what they did here versus the Demco 8020 as an example. Always got to give that thing a little whirl when you get it out. But that's a pretty similar knife size right there. The Hinderer definitely keeps coming to mind to me on this one as something that, when I think of a knife in this size category, as well as like what do you look for in a knife, American made versus Chinese and stuff, you know, it definitely comes to mind as an alternative that you have. It's certainly a different deployment method. You can get a fuller Hinderer, not that that's super common. And the other one that comes to mind is, you know, maybe like a fuller Demco. I've already got one out there, but the 8020S is a little more similar just in terms of blade stock thickness. So if you can get a slicer shark, that's probably a really similar price range on a G10 slicer shark. And that's when you start feeling like let me grab one in a G10 here. But that the Microtech Anax is really bringing a more premium material and build to the table versus the American-made alternative. So let's get some of these other guys out of here real quick. You know, those others are going to be more like 600 plus. So for a similar price range, you're getting, that's a very similar knife in terms of weight, size, blade stock thickness, and so on. I didn't really have, this knife didn't even exist. In fact, the Slicer Shark came out after the Anax. I didn't really have this one to compare when I did the first video, but it's actually a pretty darn good comparison knife. Let me get this tilted forward more so that the proportions look a little more similar. And they remind me a lot of each other in terms of what it's like to handle them. The weight, the overall feel in hand is probably a little better feel in hand on the Demco, even though it's G10. Certainly you get that more premium feel here, a little more of that drop shutty kind of premium type knife feel. You know, this is going to compete a little bit with something like a Roosevelt. A Roosevelt's much smaller, so in that way it's not comparable, but in terms of like quality of feel and that kind of stuff, that's where I see this one, you know, being like an SBK Lamia or I don't know if it's pronounced Lamia or whatever, or like a Roosevelt, maybe like a Brian Brown. Grab one out real quick. Where do I have one here? This is probably, I mean, this is probably a little smaller, but one of the better comparable knives. This one's a more customized one. Yeah, it's quite a bit smaller, but, you know, this is made in China, so that's why it kind of comes to mind. U.S. person doing design, U.S. design, Chinese build. Also, I think Reich, if I recall correctly. But you can see some of the overall full tie and whatnot. So interesting knife. I feel like if you're looking for a conversation piece, if you're looking for something that is integral because that is appealing to you, if you're looking for that sort of super simplified fuller only deployment, this one is certainly a player for those check boxes. If you're looking for the American made, if you're looking for, you know, the more all-arounder, hard use knife, anything like that, this is probably not your knife. Those are kind of the things that come to mind for me on this one. You know, M390 blade steel in there. There's just a lot of premium about this knife. And yet there's also some things like I kind of wish the handle was a little taller, just so it felt a little more generous. I wish the fuller was done just a little differently to make it a little easier and more consistent, given that if you did a bigger handle, it might make that easier because you'd have more room to not like put lock bar pressure on while you're deploying it. Not that it's a huge issue with this one, but it definitely is a little bit of an issue. Probably go with a slightly different pocket clip. So there are a few things I would change about it, but generally it still holds up and what it's good at, what it's cool at, just all the finishing, the chamfering, the integral, you know, the seamlessness of this inlaid carbon fiber is pretty darn good all around. Yeah, a lot to love here. Love these proprietary pivots because they give you a tool to open it. Don't love them because you can't use a standard tool, but they are really neat looking and kind of go with the design more than a, you know, a typical, not that this is, doesn't really stand out that much, right? But typical show side looks good and non-show side doesn't look as good. Whereas here you have a really nice looking pivot on both sides, which is cool. You don't even really, you almost think of these pivots are like in the design, which is really neat, how everything has that same cool pivot style. So neat knife, not something I would use on a daily basis. Not 100% sure if it sticks around in my collection, transparently speaking, but something that's been a good experience and something I'm glad I got my hands on and may just pass it on the next one so they can get on the next person so they can get their hands on it as well. All for now. Please let me know if you have questions, comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.